Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, Masechta Shavuot, Daf Yud Beis. We are going to begin on the bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Beis, the second line from the bottom. V'Rabbanan de Pligla Rab Shimon. So we were learning this concept called Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen, namely that sometimes Beis Din is going to make a condition under certain circumstances to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to certain karbanos. Now, everyone holds like this, including the Shita of Rav Shimon. He does not hold this concept of Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen. What exactly is this talking about? So we were learning the past couple daf, and when it comes, for example, to a tamid. Now, current tamid, the tamid is something which is brought every day, twice a day. But as we saw on Daf Yud Amud Beis, quotes in Rashi that there used to be 6 teloyim that used to be designated in the Lishkas HaTeloyim, and the problem was on the last day of the year, 2 of them were makar, and there's 4 left over. You cannot use them for the next year, because whenever we collect the shkolim, those monies had to be used for the new year. So anything which was old could not be used. The question is, what do you do with those 4 teloyim? So we had a machlokas whether or not you actually have to wait until it gets like a mum, which is the typical situation, before you could be paid it. Or do we say no, that even before it develops a mum, you can be makar of it right away? Now, why would you be able to do that? So the reason, after where did the kedusha go? So the answer is that this is a case of Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen. We also saw this when it came to the moiser ketayris. If you have leftover ketayris for the end of the year, it could be used in a strategic way. How exactly it's done is specified in the Gemara in Yud Amud Beis, that you could be used to pay for the maintenance workers for the Beis HaMikdash. How is that possible? So either it's Kedush, maybe it's Kedushas Domim, even if it's Kedushas Aguf, the question is how can it be done? Because Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen. And even when it comes to something which is a milsudol shchicha, which normally they would not do. However, when it comes, for example, to paraduma, because it was so expensive, they also made such a condition. Therefore, if let's say you found another paraduma that was better than it, so even though it has no mum on it, you could still be paid it right away. However, Rav Shimon does not hold of Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen, because he holds when it comes to the tamidin, if what tamidin shel hutzu chod sibor, Rav Shimon says you have to wait until it gets a mum. Ein niftin tamimim. Why not? Must be because he does not hold Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen. However, the Chachamim says it could be niftin tamimim. Why? Because the Chachamim hold that Leiv Beis Din is Masna Lehen. Okay, with that little introduction, or not such a little introduction, let's continue. Rabbanan de Pligla Rab Shimon, manin who is this? So name or Rabbanan de Ketayris, as we talked about by the case of the Ketayris, the fact that you can use that money, you can use the Ketayris, the Moitzer Ketayris, to pay for your workers. What do you mean? How is that allowed? Because Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen, as we continue to base on Aleph, the Mashana Ketayris to lo bar iyahi. So as we said, it's different when it comes to the Ketayris because there's no other remedy. There's nothing else you could do with it, which is actually, this is really the first time the Gemara says this, which is TB6. But this is another distinction, not just because of maybe it's Kedushas Domim, even if it's Kedushas Aguf, the reality is there's nothing else you can do, because when it comes to the Ketayris, what are you waiting? You can't wait. It still remains Ketayris, it doesn't change. Mashen can, an animal could develop a mum, so maybe you should just wait for a mum. So therefore, there's no raya from that necessarily. El or Abana de Para. When it comes to the Paraduma, as we said, is another example. We said Leiv Beis Din Masna Lehen. No, but Dilma Shani Para did Dilmeha Yikar. Maybe it's just because it was so expensive and it's so hard to find. So that's the reason why they made that exception by Paraduma Dafka. Maybe not when it comes to the Talmud. Rather, it's the Rabbanan that said in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehudahi, says Rashi, "B'masnisim hachi amrilei hoyel vein kaparasun shave." Since the kapara for each one of these things, the sir Rosh Chodesh, the sir for the Regalim, or for Yom Kippur, they all serve different forms of kapara, a person has yidi b'soif or not yidi b'soif or not at all, or you're tahar and you eat something which is tameh. V'leislach based in masna. They don't hold of based in masna. Shim avad b'zeh. He said if you're makar of one, yakar v'zel kapara cheres heichen karivin. So you can say, well, how is it possible you can be makriv if, let's say, you have the sir rosh chodesh, even though it serves a different purpose? Let's say you have an extra sir rosh chodesh, you can use it for sir for the regolim. How's that possible? It must be because of lay based in masna. So b'maydu Rabbi Yehudahi b'hachi karmelei bishlam diamina lay based in masna lehen tolahachi yikravu. That's the reason why you can be makriv it, because even though they have different, each sa'ir, right, for the Rosh Chodesh or whatever, provide different kapara, provide different atonement. It doesn't matter. Nonetheless, since lay based in, it works. So you can, right? So that makes sense. If you hold that you don't hold lay base and mas, that doesn't make any sense. And why would you be able to be makriv the sir rosh chodesh that you have an extra one for the regolim? They serve two totally different purposes. So Dil Rav Meir, maybe it's actually the sheet of Rav Meir that, as Rashi says, Karmila the Islay Kapras and Shava. He says that actually all of the seirim, with the exception of the sir b'fnim, but the sir b'chutz, the sir muad of regolim and Rosh Chodesh, they all collectively provide kapara for numerous things. So maybe that's the reason, just because we hold like this sheet of Rav Meir. So v'hachi karmelei bishul medidi yamid kol hasirim kapras and shava. They're all the same. They all provide the same. They provide kapara for all different types of things. Mishum hachi yurkavu. That's the reason why the sir rosh chodesh could be brought for the sir regolim, for example, even though they're for different purposes. But the truth is, they don't really serve different purposes because they're mechaper for all the same thing. El didach, but according to you, that they do different kapara. So my yurkavu. So why would you be makrivitz? So therefore, it's not necessarily a raya from there. El Rav Yochanan Gomer Gemirullah. Rather, Rav Yochanan bases his opinion based on tradition. With Divi Rav Shimon, ein niftin. With Divi Chachamim niftin. He just understood that that's what the din is. That Rav Shimon holds ein niftin as a tamim, and the Chachamim say, yes, you could be pointed as a tamim. That's it. Okay, now Rav Shimon delays lay based in Masnalan. Now again, he holds that there's no such thing as based in Masnalan. Mayavdinulhu. So then, Taka, what do you do with these tamidim shulchutz u'chelet tzibor? What, according to him, do you do with them? So, Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yochanan, mekitzim lehenes mizbeach. We use that as the mekitzin lehenes mizbeach. Could be like dessert, if you will. But really, the point is that when you do not have carbonos at hand, so then you can be marked as a carbon oil. And it's logical because these carbonos are serving as a seir. The seir is an oil, so therefore it can be brought as an oil. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak umaydu Rav Shimon b'sir chatos shein mekitzin begufin eladam b'demehen. So again, since it's an oil, it's okay. However, when it comes to sir chatos, she'ein makitzin begufan el b'dmeihem, right? And the answer is, since it can't go from a chatos to an oil. Okay, especially because what happens if you are makriv it before the kapara, it was actually the kapara took place. So she'ein makitzin begufan el b'dmeihem hacha hudimi kara oila. Originally, it's an oila, v'hashta oila. El b'hasam nimi kar chatas v'hashta oila. But since it was originally a chatas, to change it to an oila, gezer lacher kapara otu lifnei kapara. This is a gezerah atulifnei kapara. So again, the problem is that if you end up bringing this, and let's look at this Rashi, Makita Mehenes Mizbeach, Kisha Mizbeach Bottle, when there's nothing on the Mizbeach, Makrim and Oisa Oilo and the Dava Sibor, we bring extra carbonos, that's what it is. Hakanami, Elu Shalachu, Watzarach Tamidin, Vulhutzrachu, you don't need them, Yikru Vulakaitim Mizbeach. So you can bring them there, Shahari, Oshem Oilo for shoe, because a Tomim, Karman Tamid, is an oila, so you can be makriv this as an oila. The kain's nami oilahu, so it's not a big deal. However, when it comes to sir chatas, is a problem. For example, the sir shel rosh chodesh adar she'avad v'nimsa b'nisan. You found it in the next month. Shenu royal l'kariv oid l'chayvet sibor. The hayu l'kaitzim is beach. Moidahu she'emakitzim aguful l'kariv hu oila el bedomov. You have to actually let it graze. And then you could purchase an oil with it. Why? Because when it came to the tamid, shuluhutzulchu, again, that was an oil, now it's an oil, so that's not a problem. Over here, because it was a chatas, is an issue of a gezerah, says Rashi. If we machsher the chatas sibor, that you could just bring as an oil, with karav oil, with achesh nischaprut sibor, which is fine, ba'acher with another carbon, right? With a different carbon, which is perfectly fine. V'nitin zeg l'ketzim mizbeach. Asi l'achshuri nami l'oil l'koidim kapara. Shestamu l'chatas chatas oimid. So it's a chatas. So therefore it's a problem. And because of gzer otu, he would be maskim. He would actually be moida rather, but by sir chatas that you wouldn't be able to do that. So what would you do with it? Again, you'd have to let it get a blemish. Omer by afanam tanina, par v'sar shel Yom Kippur. When it came to Yom Kippur, the par and the sa'ir shavdu, they got lost. The hivrish acherim tachtein, and therefore because that you replace them. The chin sir avodah zara. So too when it comes to a sar of avodah zara shavdu hivrish acherim tachtein, you replaced it. Kuan Yamusu de Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds they have to die. That is the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Lezer, Rav Shimon, Oimrim Yiru Anshit Stabu. He says you should let them first graze in order that they should get a mum, right? Let them get a mum. You can't be makar it as is, but you have to wait to get a mum. So because you don't want a chata sibor, we're not going to kill a chata sibor. So the question is, why wait for a mum to come onto it? Nikravu inhu b'gufaihu oila. Why do you first make it get a mum, sell it, and then buy another animal for ketzim mizbeach? Just do it right away. So this is a raya that kapara, because we're talking about a chatos, the sir avodah zarah were sin, and also the purpose of the sar shel Yom Kippurim are chatos. So therefore, because of that, that's the din. Okay, so therefore that's a raya that we're geyser la'achar kapara to lifnei kapara. Amrav afanamatanina. I'll prove it again. B'sheni. So what is this talking about? So this is really missing a lot of words. So fortunately, Rashi helps us out, quoting the Gemara Masechtas Yoma. When it comes to the Shtei Seirim, one echad l'chatos, one is lazazel. So what happens to Meis HaMishtaleach, the one that was supposed to be, and you did a garul, you did the lottery, and it turns out that the one that you put aside as to be the mishtaleach, to be sent away to Lazazel, died. So now you're stuck with one sawyer. So you need two other ones. What do? You do another lottery. V'yishtalach echad v'nimsu shnayim l'shem echad mezug rishon. So it turns out that they're connected to the first. Echad mezug sheni. Echad yakrav l'sar hanas bifnim. V'sheni yirav yipol dama v'nadava. Shen chasasibor mesa. So what do we require? then you have to take the second one and you have to let it graze and let it get a mum. What's the problem? Why do we have to first take two other animals? Why don't you just take this one that's alive, that was L'Hashem, and be makar of that one? Why does it have to get a mum and everything like that? It's the same thing. Another proof. If you have a carbon asham that the owner died, well, let's say the owner already achieved kapara. So what do you do with this asham? So again, yirachi etstayev. You should let it graze and get a mum. Rabbi Lezer Omer Yomus. Rabbi Shua Omer Yavi B'dam of Oyla. You can actually bring with its money an Oyla of Lahakriv. So Hagufa Oyla. It's what do you mean? What does that mean with its value? It's an Oyla right now. Okay, so we keep bringing proof after proof to demonstrate this same phenomena that we're geyser one after the other. Okay, let's look at question one. Question one. How is it possible that one sa'ir can be brought for a different one, Rosh Chodesh for the Muadim or whatever? So, Badul Shitasa Nicha the sa'ir Sha'avad B'Yom Kippurim Karab Rosh Chodesh or Golim. So one is because of it must be because he holds wave based in the Mastalan, that's why you could do it. Or it's Ram Meir who holds that all the Seirim have the same kapara. They achieve the same. They achieve a kapara for all those things. And Yudiyah B'Tchila, no B'Chila or B'Sof, or a person who's Tameh, a person who's Tahar and ate Tameh. Okay, fine. Let's see. Okay, we didn't do that. We're not going to do that question. Let's see. Question 6. Okay, we didn't do that yet. Okay. All right. Good. All right, let's keep on going. So we keep bringing proofs that we make a gzeira because of lifnei kapara, and therefore even lachar kapara we can't just use that same carbon. So we are proving this over and over again because we're trying to show the shita of Rav Shimon when it comes to sir chatos that you can't use it as ketzim mizbech, because once a chatos then it turns into an ola. If kapara wasn't achieved, that's problematic. So we brought all these other proofs again. One by for example avodah zarah. So the seer of avodah zarah gets lost. You have to wait. You got to get a mum. When it comes to the Soyer HaMishtalech that gets killed, you have to bring two other ones. So these are all proofs, again, that we're geyser one on the other. And then finally, by the din of a where was I? The din of an Asham Shemei Subalav. Okay. So again, elav gzerish lachar kapara to lifnei kapara. Shmamina. Tani mihachi. Mahin mavian min hamasayus. What do they bring from the extras of the tzibor? Says Rashi, shenusru mishal neshama. Anything which is extra from one of the year. What do you do with that stuff? So as we continue, Beis with Beis. So Kate's kivnoi shuach l'mizbeach. It's like again like almost a dessert. Like kivnoi shuach is like white figs on the mizbeach. Says Rashi, Kadem shemevi hakinuach seuda mini matika v'ulashin kates. This is like something sweet, some type of like a dessert you bring onto the mizbeach. Okay. Boksiv kikoyel seor b'chol davash v'goymer. It says you're not allowed to put honey on the mizbeach. It says b'chol mini peros se'ilan b'chlal, and any fruit fall into that category. So what do you mean you're bringing kivnoi shuach on the mizbeach? So Tani Rav Chanina kivnoi shuach l'adam. It's obviously we're not literally putting honey onto the mizbeach, but we're putting something which is similar to a person who continues to enjoy eating, so they eat a little bit dessert and so the meal continues, so to the mizbech, which is empty, so that's why it's called ketzel mizbech. But of course, we're not actually putting mini peros onto the mizbech. Darsh Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, ein makitzin b'oil sa'oif. So when it comes to an oil sa'of, even the one it's an ola, you're not allowed to take that as ketzel mizbech. And we'll see the reason why in a second. Says Rashi, Desanya B'Tars Kohanim, the Hikriv min Haturim. So it says, and he, right? And he is Makriv, which is clearly, which is Lashon Yachid. Okay? And on the side it says, the Hikriv min Haturim as Karbano Hayachid. Right? That's the point. And therefore, when it comes to Ketzel Mizbech, it has to be something which is something connected to a carbon sibor. And therefore, an oil sa'of, which is linked to a carbon yachid, cannot be brought onto the mizbeach as ketzel mizbeach. Says Rashi again, v'hikr min hatorim hayachim maybe oif, v'nat sibor mevi'an oif. That's why it cannot be a ketzel mizbeach. Omer Rava ha burcha. This seems to be false. This doesn't seem to be truth. Omerle Rav Nachmar Yitzchak Rava my burchasa. Why are you claiming that it's not true? Nam Risan Hil, we're saying it to you. Mishmeid Rabbi Shimon ben Harda Am Risan Hile. It was quoted by an Adam Choshev, right? So why would you say such a thing that it's not true? So Diamar Rav Shimon ben Harda, he says Moiseres l'nadava sibor azli ve'ein oyos ov but sibor. That's what he says beferish. When it comes to anything left over, it only works when it comes to the Nadav Sibor. However, if it's a carbon yachid, like an oyos ov, cannot be brought ketzel mizbeach. You have Shmuel Savar l'had Rabbi Yochanan. Shmuel holds like that too. The Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel carbon sibor. When it comes to a carbon sibor, sakin moish chasan lama shehein. Says Rashi, sakin hashaychten stam moish chasan carbon. When it's shechted for a carbon, shehufresh betchil lakach. Ve'afilu hein in ze oiso carbon atzma. Going olos tamid, oil lakayetz im in a royal tamid. If for whatever reason, if it's not fit for a tamid, it could still be brought ketzel mizbech. That's because it's a carbon sibor. So a carbon sibor can be brought ketzel mizbech, but not a carbon yachid. Tanim hachi yimodim Rav Shimon Messiah. He agrees when it comes to a sa'ir. She'im lo karb b'regel yikar b'rosh chodesh. Ve'im lo karb b'rosh chodesh yakar b'yom kippurim. Ve'im lo karb b'yom kippurim yakar b'regel. Ve'im lo karb b'regel ze yakar b'regel acher. So you can always be makar for something else. Shemetchilaso lo ba el chaper el mizbeach hachitzoin, because it originally only came to memchaper on the mizbeach hachitzoin. Tana lo hukdash el chaper el mizbeach hachitzoin. Fine. Okay. All right. Let's look at question 12. Question 2 rather. He im mekaitzen mizbeach b'oyos. No. Uma stadim mizeh. So why would you say yes? So he says like this: Kivande in olos of but sibor talia beput the Rabban Rabbi Lezer imus sers azlu karbonos yachid or raka karbonos sibor. So apparently this is a machlokas, but that's why he said it's borchasa. But clearly we hold taka that it is not allowed to be brought. But apparently not everyone holds like this. So question TA6, which seems a little more clean. Madua ein makitzin b'olos of. Why not? So he says, Meiseres l'nadav sibor asli ve'inolos oif but sibor. That's it. Okay. All right, let's just do a small little piece more, then we'll stop. V'al zadoin tumas mitish kadashim ser hanas mifnim v'chul. Okay. So let's go back to our Mishnah, which again is accompanies the entire parak. This is how this Masechta works. So, let's get this down. So, v'al zadon tumas mikdash kadashav. Let's say a person is bemazed. Okay, so let's just find this in the Mishnah. So when a person is bemazed, so sa'ir, in other words, they were tahor and they went in on purpose. Sir hanasa bifnim miyom kippur mechaprin. So we say that taka the sir hanasa bifnim will and Yom Kippur will be mechaper even though you did it b'zadin. Okay, says the Gemara. So minahanimili, how do we know that's the case? That the sir hanasa bifnim and Yom Kippur mechaper the tanam b'chiper al kaidish metumos b'nei sov gaimer b'shayim el hamard. These are people who are rebellious. The Chenu Omer Melch Moye Pashabi. The Omer Oz Tivsha Livna Be'esahi Chatas El Hashkagos. The Chenu Omer Nefesh Kisechta B'Shkaga. So therefore, we see that even though a person violated, so we saw a person can violate B'Shoge because there was a situation where he didn't know, right? Also, in the case of B'Zadain, we see that a person will be Mechap, there'll be a kapara on Tumas Kodesh and Mikdashov, when a person, they bring the Sar Bifnim, and Yom Kippur will be Mechaper. Adkan.